Warning, this video contains spoilers for the Fallout television series, so if you want to remain spoiler-free, then turn back now. For those of you who have seen the series, this will serve to explain the lore within the greater Fallout universe, and may even bring a few things to light that have been missed. Season 1, Episode 1 is titled The End. The reason for this is because this episode shows the end of the pre-war world. The show opens up with Cooper Howard, an actor in the Fallout world prior to the war, performing at a children's party. The scene cuts to a shot of a radio where we can hear a news report about peace talks that were scheduled to continue that day, and that the White House would not comment on the whereabouts of the president. This of course refers to the fact that we know that the president had fled to a secret location just before the bombs fell. A location that would later be learned was an oil rig off the California coast in Fallout 2. The mother of the house quickly turned off the radio as she seemed to not want to have it interfere with the party. We then get our first look at a Mr. Handy robot who offers his services as the mother walks by with the birthday cake in hand. She enters the living room where two other mothers are watching a news report talking about the peace talks breaking down in Anchorage, Alaska, and as he started talking about the potential for nuclear war, the mother of the birthday boy shut it off and said, "This is a party. Let's just focus on the party." The house is on a hill overlooking the city of Los Angeles. The scene continues with Howard taking photos with the birthday boy, and his daughter is nearby helping out. He gets asked to do his famous thumbs up, but he declines. This will become more important later. Shortly after, it cuts to the partygoers singing happy birthday, while Howard and his daughter get ready to leave. The kid then gets a slice of cake and walks over to the TV and turns it on. The TV is still tuned into the newscast, which is now showing a weatherman saying he can't do the weather if he doesn't know if there's going to be a next week. The mother then changes the channel to a station showing Grognak the Barbarian. Grognak is of course a fictional comic character who is featured in many of the games. The scene then cuts to outside with Howard's daughter asking why he wouldn't do the thumbs up before. Howard answered saying it was just grown-up stuff. He then started explaining where the thumbs up came from. In this case, we learn that it came from military propaganda where he was told that if a nuclear bomb went off, all he had to do was hold up his thumb in front of his face, and if the mushroom cloud was smaller than his thumb, then you run for the hills. If not, well, not to bother running. In the Fallout universe, it is also the iconic pose for the Vault Boy. His daughter asks the impossible question, "Do you think it's gonna happen?" His reply was a heartfelt, "I certainly hope not, but us cowpoke, we take it as it comes." His daughter then asks if she can have a slice of cake, and Howard is more than happy to get one for her. Now this entire time, the parents have been taking photos, and while Howard is grabbing a slice of cake, a flash of a nuke going off in the city happens just as a flash from one of the photos being taken happens. His daughter sees the flash in the distance and holds up her thumb, with the look of fear on her face as Howard comes back with the cake, and she asks, "Is it your thumb or mine?" Then Howard sees it and says, "That's just smoke from a fire." Then the mushroom cloud forms and the blast wave hits. Now, with the look of shock and fear on his face, he knew he had to get his daughter out of there. The family of the birthday boy rushed to their fallout shelter, fighting off some of their guests along the way. Howard rushed to his horse with his daughter in hand to try to get away from the inevitable destruction that was upon them. Then we get the title shot. This first scene was really well done. Even if you have never played the games before, you could instantly understand what was going on, and it built the world so perfectly. Holding the title scene till after the first sequence was a smart play too, because it built up what Fallout means. The show continues with the next shot telling us that we are now 219 years after the bombs fell. We are now inside a vault with our main vault character, Lucy McLean. She's interviewing with a council to be able to be selected for a marriage to a resident of Vault 32, and she lists for them the reasons she should be chosen. Now, I understand that for the layperson, they might not understand what is going on here, but for a Fallout fan, we know this is just one of the crazy things we have come to understand happens in a vault. She explains her skills, and for those who paid attention, she only mentioned 3 skills. Those were repair, science, and speech. This is a reference to the tagged skills that we start with in all of the Fallout games prior to Fallout 4. By tagging skills, you would get a bonus to the starting percentage which the game would use to determine success or failure when using those skills. I also want to take note here, when Lucy mentions her speech skill, the chalkboard shows 3 dates: 1776, which is labeled as the Declaration of Independence, 1969, which shows a single star surrounded by 13 smaller stars. This represents the 13 Commonwealths of the USA. Apparently, at some point in 1969, the United States was divided into 13 Commonwealths, which is how the USA is referred to in the games. This part of the episode lets us know the year that change took place. Of course, the last date was 2077, which was when the bombs fell. Lucy went on to list some of the skills she has improved on or uses, but to a lesser degree. This points to the fact that even after tagging skills, we still have to distribute points, and Lucy has decided to put points into sneak, melee weapons, unarmed, and small guns. Of course, she has labeled them differently, but I think this was more for the casual viewer because fans would understand what skill was actually being referred to. While describing her personal time, we see her brother for the first time, and we see him playing a game on his Pip-Boy. This game being played was Atomic Command. This game is featured in both Fallout 4 and 76. The council approved her request, and this sets the show in motion. We see the vault getting ready for this special occasion, and we see the wedding dress that is used, apparently by every person who does this, has the names and dates listed on the inside portion of the dress. Now, to be clear, this ritual is done only in this set of vaults, and they have direct contact with a second vault in Vault 32. They use this ritual as a way of keeping the genetic pool of both vaults in a healthy state. Lucy steps out into the common area where she sees the spot where the ceremony will take place, and the shot pans out to show the Telsonic projector that will be mentioned in a later episode. This projector shows a 3D representation of a country farm to give the feeling of the outdoors, even while inside an underground vault. Lucy has a heartfelt moment with her father, who we learn comes from Vault 31. This means that there are 3 vaults interconnected with each other: Vault 31, 32, and 33, all sharing connections. We also learn that Lucy's mother is no longer alive. We then see Vault 32's door open, and the group from that vault enters Vault 33 for the ceremony. The corresponding celebration seems a bit strange, as the manners of the Vault 32 group seem to be lacking. We will find out why soon enough. After a brief speech by Lucy's father, Overseer Hank McLean, the Vault 33 residents begin to dance as the celebration continues. Shortly after, Lucy and her new husband make their way to their quarters and do the things that newlyweds do. While this is happening, Lucy's brother Norm decides to investigate Vault 32, and he finds something he didn't expect to find. This sends him running back to his vault. We then see Lucy. She gets up from her bed and discovers something disturbing. Lucy hears some noises and screams, and she quickly puts 2 and 2 together. She grabs her Pip-Boy and uses the radiation detector on her husband, only to discover that he is not who he said he was. Instead, he is a raider. A fight ensues between them, and Lucy nearly gets killed. After having been stabbed, Lucy goes to her first aid kit, and we get the first use of a stim pack on the show. This will come up again in a bit, but for now, she is healed enough to go out of her room and try to help the vault. The rest of the vault dwellers are either dead or fighting for survival, as we see some of them have been killed and others are still trying to kill the raiders. Lucy ends up going into the armory, which has been ransacked, and finds a new weapon. The weapon of choice is, of course, a Syringer pistol. We find Syringer rifles in Fallout 4 and 76. As the battle rages on, one of the raiders takes some jet just before being cut in half by a closing door. Jet is a chem that has been in nearly every game. Lucy ends up saving her brother, and in turn, Hank saves Lucy. The scene then cuts to Hank and Lucy running into a trap laid by Moldaver, the person who pretended to be the Vault 32 overseer. Hank is given a choice to either save the vault hostages or his daughter. To no one's surprise, he chooses his daughter by grabbing her and locking her in the utility closet. He says to her, "You are my world," and then is struck by tranquilizers. Moldaver then says a few words and encourages Lucy to leave the vault. The scene ends with an explosive device going off at the Vault 32 door. All of what we have seen so far has greater story implications later on, but for now we will continue. The next scene cuts to Maximus, a Brotherhood of Steel aspirant, getting his butt kicked by other aspirants. We are now inside a Brotherhood of Steel training camp, which is set up at an old Air Force base. The scene cuts to a class where a scribe is teaching the aspirants how to identify pre-war tech, and during the class, an airship arrives. The airship was identified incorrectly by Vanity Fair as the Cassonon, but the name on the side says Pridwin. This has led to many theories, but I'm going to set things straight. This airship is in fact the Pridwin. This is the same ship that the Brotherhood used to leave the capital wasteland to journey to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Now, some of you might be saying, but if that's true, then that means Maxon is also there and we did not see him. To that, I will say that one of two things happened. Assuming Maxon is alive, either he just didn't leave the airship, or, and this is more likely, he is still with the Brotherhood in Massachusetts, and he sent the Pridwin on this mission. Either way, this is the Pridwin, and I'm certain we will learn more in future seasons. For now, let's continue. This scene also gives us the first look at the T-60 power armor and the vertibirds that acted as escorts for the Pridwin. We then see a communications tent and a coded message being delivered, with a squire decoding the message. This squire appears to be the squire of the scribe, who is overseeing the message delivery. You see, the Brotherhood are a military faction that uses a mix of military and Christian beliefs, as well as a mix of old mythology from King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. The show does a great job of putting this on full display. Maximus then takes a closer look at a T-60 power armor that is placed at a workstation, and the scene cuts to a flashback of Maximus as a kid who was just a toddler seeing a knight in one of these armors rescue him from a destroyed ruin. This will pop up again in a later episode. Maximus learns that his friend was chosen to become a squire before him, and he gets upset. This leads to him being taken into custody the next morning because his friend got injured by someone who tampered with his friend's boot. The scene then cuts back to Lucy in the vault, and we see her stapling her knife wound closed. Remember that stim pack she used? Well, this is where some people think that they got the lore messed up. Here's the truth. They did not. Yes, she used a stim pack and it did heal her. But just like in the games, when you are mortally wounded, it takes more than one stim pack to fully heal you. This also harkens back to Fallout 1, where stim packs were not the only healing agent. We also had first aid kits, and this is what is being represented. Lucy is finishing healing up after the battle has concluded. We now see the council assembled in the common area, and Lucy proposes sending a small team to go rescue her father. This idea gets promptly shot down as they are unwilling to send anyone out of the vault for any reason. Her brother Norm says to her that they don't want to find him because then they would not be in charge anymore. Lucy is distraught by this, and while she helps with the cleanup, she looks at a Vault Boy poster that says, "Don't lose your head." At this point, she comes up with a plan to leave the vault and search for her dad on her own. Lucy then leaves the vault and sees the world for the first time. Just like every Fallout game, just outside the vault there are skeletons and ruins of civilization. As she rounds the corner of the vault entrance, we see the ocean and the Santa Monica Pier. This means that Vault 33 was built next to the ocean, which is unusual but not unheard of. We know that there is at least one vault that was built underwater in the Boston area, though that vault ultimately got cut from the game. Then we cut back to Maximus, who is now being interrogated by the Brotherhood because they think it was he who injured a fellow Brother of Steel. This entire scene is very telling of his character and that he truly wants to serve the Brotherhood. Maximus ends up getting promoted to Squire and takes the place of his injured friend, but had to learn a very hard lesson in humility to get it. One of the things said during this interrogation, though, did spark some discourse in the community. The Scribe Elder said that violence is a tool that the Brotherhood uses to bring order to the wasteland. This is in line with the Brotherhood of the first Fallout game, and is something that was picked up in Fallout Tactics and later in Fallout 3, and even got used in 76. You see, some people think that the Brotherhood are simply a technology cult and they don't care about the rest of the people of the wasteland. This is not entirely true. Yes, they do care about controlling technology as they see it as the greatest threat to the survival of humanity. They believe in this so much that they travel far and wide in search of tech to seize it, categorize it, and learn from it. In order to help the people, they must first protect them from themselves because technology is the greatest threat to humanity. This is why they do the things that they do and what drives them into action. Maximus is still learning, and the lesson that he learned will drive him to do better. Sure, he will still make mistakes along the way, but he will learn nonetheless. The ceremony involved in making Maximus a squire was interesting to say the least. It really embodies the ritualistic nature of the Brotherhood's belief system. He is told that his most sacred duty is to protect the Brotherhood, then the mission, then to protect his knight. It is interesting that they also added the word Lord to the knight's name, and I think it fits very well with the Brotherhood mythology. Maximus is then branded after accepting the new rank. We then cut to a scene where the knights are being given their orders, and we find out that the decoded message from earlier was a description of a person who escaped from the Enclave. Fans of the games will recognize the Enclave as they are the last remnants of the old US government. We also see these ridiculously sized bags next to the squires, which are nearly as big as they are. I think this is just a representation of one thing that every Fallout player must endure: overencumbrance. We all know the plight of carrying too much loot. To see it given form was a nice nod. The scene then cuts to a building near what appears to be a lake as the water is very still. We see a guard get shot and killed by a doll's leg. This was shot by someone with a junk jet. Fans will recognize this unique weapon as it was first seen in Fallout 4. It shoots any junk items you may have in your inventory as its ammunition. This is done by a small group of mercenaries. They came to this place to find the ghoul who happens to be buried in a cemetery. He emerges, and after a dialogue exchange, he ends up outsmarting the group and kills the junk jet guy. He then escapes his imprisonment, leaving with the group's things and taking over their bounty. He leaves the area after saying, "Us cowpokes, we take it as it comes." This is our clue that this is the same person we saw at the start of the episode, Cooper Howard. The episode ends with a panning shot through the area of the Santa Monica Pier and the surrounding area. Now that the episode is complete, let's talk about it. First, each character in the show match up very nicely with how they would be in a game. Lucy is a low-level, sometimes naive character who follows the same track as we as players would in the games. Maximus is also a low level, though slightly higher than Lucy, who is also taking a similar route that we as players would. The ghoul is a high level character who has seen and been through the worst of situations. He clearly falls into the eccentric mentor role, as we will learn throughout the series. For now, he is simply a badass bounty hunter. Second, the overarching story is brilliant. The story follows the same rules as the main quests do in-game, and we even see side quests pop up throughout. Episode 1 did an excellent job of introducing us into the world of Fallout, and it even did a great job of making you feel for the characters in the story. We got introduced to the entire main cast in some way, shape, or form, and even got to know a few of the supporting cast, some of whom we will learn more about in future episodes. The set design was so perfect that I often thought that they pulled it right out of the games. I love the attention to detail, from the look of each location right down to the items used. Everything matches up with what we have come to see in the games. Each faction was also carefully crafted. I love that the show really brought to life the Brotherhood of Steel. They showed us so much of the mythology of that faction, coupled with the practicality of its social and political structure. We have so much more to see, and as we continue through the series, I will be pointing out all of the most important moments. If you have not watched the show yet, I can't recommend watching it enough. This show is very much worth the time it takes to watch, so if you're interested, please go watch it. What did you think of the first episode? Did you see anything I missed? Sound off in the comments below. While you're at it, like, subscribe, and share. And as always, I'm just glad you stopped by, and I'll see you in the next one.